RJ Young, Fox Sports, joins us. 365 Sports on this Monday, Labor Day Monday. We're here while a lot of people are enjoying a holiday, and RJ decided to join us as well on Zoom, so it's great to see your face, and thank you for your time. RJ, one of the things I came out of the weekend, even though there were a handful of games last weekend, is how much I love the sport, how much it's just great that it was a full weekend with a lot of what were highly anticipated games.
And we're not done yet, which is, I think, the best part of this. I always love the Labor Day weekend because it is the feature for our sport. It's the last time that we're going to play college football without any NFL on Sundays. And we're always going to have these outstanding games, starting with week 0, going into week 1. We had a really great one with USC and LSU, which I was wondering about because that's the marquee game on Sunday. It's the one we're all watching, and it lived up to its billing, to say nothing of some outstanding football that was played on Saturday. My goodness, I get to see an Iowa team that put up more points than an Oregon team. And I'm going to have so much fun talking about that as we head into this all-important week where we're going to see Texas, Michigan, Baylor, Utah. I mean, Nebraska, Colorado. I'm fired up.
Yeah, RJ, I thought I'd maybe entered into a different timeline with Oregon and Iowa flipping things there. You're one of my favorite ones to watch because you have great opinions on things. I'm curious. So Dabo Swinney has gotten a lot of heat for not using the transfer portal, and that certainly was a part of why they lost to Georgia the other day, and a large part of it. But the other thing I think that is evident that if he's doubling down on high school recruiting, the kids he's recruiting out of high school seem like they're well behind the kids that Georgia are recruiting out of high school too.
Well, it's also Georgia getting the pick of the litter here. Like, that's kind of what it means. Like, I remember Nick Saban saying this. He would fear Georgia. When we would talk about what he was doing at Alabama, he'd say, I don't know, man, if somebody gets figured out at Georgia, that's a monster. And you know what? The guy that he was raising up, his greatest assistant of all time, has taken over that mantle. And if you grow up in the state of Georgia and they don't pluck you, it ain't because you ain't any good. It's simply because they're already full. They get to throw guys in there like Ellis Robinson IV and KJ Bolden just because they can, in addition to guys like Malachi Starks, who was another outstanding do-everything athlete from the state of Georgia. Meanwhile, with Clemson, I think it's more about who he's getting and how quickly he wants to play them. And frankly, might be the first time that he's missed on quarterback ever. I mean, I'm really thinking about this hard. And I know how people kind of felt about Chase Bryce, but the idea that you get to bring Trevor Lawrence in there to replace a Kelly Bryant who had taken you to a college football playoff, what Taj Boyd has meant, generational talents like Deshaun Watson, Cade Klubnik has a lot to figure out for me. Like, I know that he was a 5-star coming out of Texas, and his claim to fame is leading Austin Westlake to a win in the state championship against Quinn Ewers and South Lake Carroll, but it starts there for me. And then coordinators, man, like, the thing that people seem to miss about Clemson is not necessarily the transfer portal or even the players. It's the staff. He had been able to raise up guys on his staff to be play callers on his staff and continue to do that. And with Brent Venables at Oklahoma, we got Tony up at Virginia, saw Just Scott go to South Florida. I was thinking that Brandon Streeter was going to be that guy. And when he decided to replace him with Garrett Riley, okay, then Brandon Streeter goes to Georgia, where he's an analyst. And Garrett Riley has scored all of 10 points in 2 games against the Georgia Bulldogs. I don't think that's a coincidence.
RJ, a great one last night, LSU and USC, and just so many storylines from a couple of head coaches who receive a lot of criticism, but also have won a lot of games, a couple of young quarterbacks, and SEC versus Big Ten. I could go on and on. What stood out to you from USC LSU last night?
Miller Moss is a guy. You know, it's one of these things where you're betting on Lincoln Riley more than you're on Miller Moss. Saw that guy lose a job to Jackson Dart, who's pretty damn good. He's at Ole Miss. Saw that guy lose a job to Caleb Williams, Heisman Trophy winner, #1 overall pick. And then we get to see Miller Moss go into the Holiday Bowl and light it up and run off anybody that was going to transfer in there, except Jaden Mayava, who was pretty damn good at UNLV before he decided to make the leap there. But this is a guy that saw it. He was spinning it. He was throwing it in the face of an oncoming rush. He looked good operating. On the other side, same thing is true of Garrett Nussmeier, man. Like, I've been watching Garrett Nussmeier since he was very small, because Doug Nussmeier was obviously not just the coordinator for Alabama, but he had done some work with Dallas Cowboys, and I'm a huge Dallas Cowboys fan. So I'm watching Garrett grow up, and he's absolutely spinning it. There were a couple of instances for both of them that I think are going to be growing pains. But as far as guys that are replacing Heisman winners and guys that are coming to programs that expect to compete for national championships, I was impressed. I don't know how you couldn't be. Both of them were efficient. Both of them threw for over 300 yards. Both of them had an opportunity to try to win this thing late. It just broke for USC in a way that it didn't break for LSU.
You know, the Big 12, as you know, RJ, in the day, once had 50 to 45 scores. Of course, they've changed quite a bit. A lot of great running backs in the conference. But for Tetaroa McMillan to be able in his first ever legitimate Big 12 game have the second highest receiving yards total in that conference's history says quite a bit. Your thoughts about what he and Fafita did, had to survive, but what they put on the show they did.
Well, surviving is 61-39. So let's start there. It ain't been Montana. It ain't been New Mexico's first 2 weeks. They wouldn't love these, right? They put money in the bag against Montana State. And then they take this really embarrassing L to Arizona. But when you got Tetaroa McMillan, you're just going to throw him the rock. And you got Noah Fafita who's going, I got one job. I'm going to throw it to that guy. If you can stop him, great. That's going to stop us. But when that man is going for over 300 yards receiving, the first 300-yard receiver since Jackson Smith and Jigba did this to Utah in the 2022 Rose Bowl, I mean, that's what it is. I remember when we were talking about Colorado joining the conference along with Arizona, and people were telling me that Travis Hunter is one of the better wide receivers in the league. And I'm going, I don't know, man. I think I got 5 guys that I would want before I want him at wide receiver, and he is one of them. I don't know what you're going to do with that guy in the rest of Big 12 play, because it's not as if people aren't bracketing him. It's not as if people aren't double covering him. And it's not as if Noah Fafita is unafraid to throw into that traffic. He's just got a guy that can go up and get it. I'm very excited to see what Arizona can do with an offense that is going to score a lot of points.
What were your thoughts on Colorado and North Dakota State? They're better, like at certain things, but they still look like they're going to be finesse first, and that maybe they're not, the meat and potatoes isn't quite there yet.
I'm not sure that it's finesse first so much as it's high school football, right? It's,
okay. Yeah.
I've got a couple of players that are better than your players, and I'm going to trust them to go win football games for me. I mean, when you look at this team, it's Shedeur Sanders, it's Travis Hunter, and it's Jimmy Horn Jr. So it's 2 wideouts and a quarterback. They still can't really block for him, but he's good enough to make it work. He's a hardy dude, and frankly, he's performing like I would expect a first-round draft pick, a quarterback, to perform with a line that isn't great, right? They still can't run the football. They still can't stop the run. And North Dakota State probably gave them more than they wanted. And I look at it this way. Oklahoma State dispatched number 1. South Dakota State was on a 29-game winning streak with a quarterback that also probably gets drafted in the NFL, and Mark Gronowski. 44-20. I know they gave up a bunch passing and a bunch rushing, but they kept a lid on the end zone. Colorado couldn't really do that. They were in a ball game, losing at halftime to North Dakota State. That does not bode well, right? I'm also going, you got a guy that's playing both ways, and he is fantastic. I love Travis Hunter. We all do. But you're asking that man to play 100 snaps in 12 games. I don't know that you're going to hold up. I don't care how much rest you get. That's just, we don't do that anymore because we know what kind of toll it's going to take on his body, to let alone say what his NFL career is going to look like. I think when they get a chance to play Nebraska, perhaps we're going to get to see another version of what we saw last week, which could be fun. I mean, Dylan Raiola can spin it, but the thing that I want to say about Shedeur that I think doesn't get enough credit, especially as we're in Big 12 country, there have been just 2 quarterbacks the last 20 years in FBS that have started their season openers with 400 yards and 4 TDs in back-to-back seasons. One of them is Shedeur Sanders. The other one is Patrick Mahomes. Anytime you're in the same company as Patrick Mahomes, you're pretty damn good.
Yeah, Shedeur's the real deal. I can't stand it when people try to knock him down for other reasons, and his play is fantastic. So I'm with, and I've never quite heard the high school analogy, but that is such a perfect a way to talk about Colorado. I feel like that's a great analogy there. So Michigan and Texas this weekend. Texas cruises, look really good against Colorado State. Didn't have to sweat that one. Michigan, on the other hand, they got some questions, RJ, starting at quarterback. What do you think? I mean, they're dogs at home to Texas. How you feeling about the Wolverines coming out of week 1 and now what they face in week 2?
They better show me something that they didn't against Fresno State. I'm telling you that right away. I was not impressed. You're 16-10 in a ball game with the Bulldogs at home at night in a stadium as whole as 110,000 screaming Michigan Wolverine fans. You ought to win that one by name the number. Instead, you need a pick 6 to really put them out of reach. And it's one thing to talk about the quarterback play, right? Davis Warren being a starter. I don't care who talks to you about it, out of Michigan. That surprises me. Alex Orji was supposed to be the guy. We know that because he was in the J.J. McCarthy spot last year that J.J. McCarthy was in when Cade McNamara was starting quarterback at Michigan. But knowing that you can't trust him to throw the ball where it needs to go, that's a red flag. Davis Warren does not have the athleticism that Alex Orji has. And he wasn't particularly efficient throwing the ball either. Now, on top of all of that, that ain't what Michigan has been built around in the Harbaugh era and what Sharon Moore is selling. We're going to run the football. We're going to play sound defense. They played sound enough defense, but I saw Will Johnson get cooked as much as I saw him making plays. That still isn't the thing that concerns me. The thing that concerns me is Donovan Edwards has not done diddly squat since he got to Michigan in the regular season. We're talking about a great game against Ohio State, so that's one. And then we're talking about really showing out in Big Ten championship games and in the college football playoff. But you got to get to that spot this year. And he's supposed to be the alpha in that backfield, quarterback or otherwise. I want to see that guy go at Texas's chest and put up the kind of numbers that he did against Washington. Because what you can't do if you are Michigan is lose to the team that lost to the team that you beat to win the national championship. Other thing I'm looking forward to, and this is Texas fans, please do me a favor on this one. Okay, I know I'm from Oklahoma, but do me a favor. I need you to go and find a photo of Bill Engvall, and I need you to put it on posters and on flyers and just hand them out to Michigan fans. And when they ask you, just tell them, here's your sign. You ain't got to steal anything.
Oh, my God. I absolutely love it. Your thoughts about Georgia? We knew they were good. They reiterated that emphatically with what they did to Clemson. But my goodness, it was not even close. And I know there's a lot about what Dabo doesn't do in the transfer portal. But won't Georgia do this to a lot of people?
I think so. But it's who they did it to and it's how they did it. Like the way I look at this is my preseason top 25 had Ohio State at 1 and Georgia at 2. We'd all heard about what Ohio State had put together in the transfer portal and what that roster looks like. And then you add Chip Kelly to this, and you can understand what they feel they have and what they're chasing. National championship. They need to win on November 30th against the Wolverines, and they need to win the national championship. And then I watched Georgia take apart Clemson. I absolutely dismantled them. They were never in that ball game, and they were never going to have a chance to be in that ball game. I did not expect that level of dominance from the Georgia Bulldogs. For instance, Ohio State beats Akron 52-6 at home, but they trailed Akron 3-0. Akron got more in common with an FCS opponent than it does the Buckeyes. Meanwhile, Georgia takes on a top 15 Clemson team that is expected to compete for the ACC title and throttles them, takes them by the neck and stays on top of them, just sitting on them, saying, we're going to do what we want to you. We don't need Trevor Etienne to beat you. It's okay. We don't need everybody to be healthy to go after your chest. We're just going to go right through you like we do everybody else. And they have won 43 of their last 45. And guys, the 2 losses are to Nick Saban's Alabama. And guess who ain't at Alabama anymore? They're wildly impressive to me. So I'm going to take the stance of until somebody beats Georgia, I'm going to just go ahead and say that Georgia's the number 1 team in the country.
Unbelievably dominant.
The Miami-Florida game was really interesting to me in a lot of regards, RJ, in that Cam Ward looks like he might have flipped the ACC, that decision of him going to Miami instead of FSU might have put Miami in the driver's seat. Now, we got to see if Mario Cristobal can get out of his own way in the close games, but Miami appears on the way up, and Billy Napier doesn't have a lot going on there. Does he make it through 6-7 games at Florida if this is what they are?
Well, the buyout for Billy Napier is $26 million, but that's a percentage based on how much is left to play and how many more on their contract. We saw what Texas A&M did with Jimbo Fisher. They waited for him to win a game, and then they decided to bounce him because it was going to work out better for their finances. I think with Florida, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, because that schedule was already a monster, and you were already going to be up against it. But the thing about Miami that I find interesting, especially knowing what Mario Cristobal does with clock management, not unlike Lincoln Riley. He treats clock management like the clock is broken, but he might not need to actually manage the clock if he's got a guy like Cam Ward who can sling it. Just like Woody Marks called game last night against LSU to save Lincoln Riley's bacon. We're talking about Cam Ward going, nah, coach, I got it. I'm going to put it out of reach. We're going to go to the swamp. We're going to gator chomp on them. I'm going to put up 385 in my debut, and then I'm going to throw the ultimate shade. I'm going to tell you that Coliseum in LA is louder than Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. Guys, church mouses. That's what they got at the Coliseum. It's never full. When is it ever full? And yet this dude is chirping. I'm with it. Other thing about the Miami part, SEC, they needed a win because Vanderbilt went and got one against Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
So what are we going to tell about the ACC if Miami didn't win this football game?
Yeah, no question about it. By the way, and then not only that, but after the game, the Miami football players were talking to the recruits who were there as a guest of Florida. I mean, it's like going into the house and stealing somebody, right? It was man.
That's what we're doing now, though, guys. Like I was thinking about it this way. I did my Ultimate 134 preseason rankings, and then I followed up with my top 100 superstars at Fox Sports. Just who are the stars in our sport that play this game? And the way that one of my editors put it was like, oh my goodness, RJ, you're telling me who we're actually going to be bidding on in the portal next year, because that's what's going to happen. If DJ Lagway does not start against Samford, or if you find a way to put Graham Mertz back there, what do you think is going to happen to your 5-star number 1 overall quarterback from the 2024 class? Is it possible he looks at Cam Ward leaving and going, I don't know, man, Miami looks like a good spot for me. So those conversations have some merit.
No question. And he might end up back near his home at A&M the way they looked at offense. Hey, RJ, great segment. Love the passion. And I'm glad we were able to make this happen. And I'll be back in touch with you. We appreciate you very much for being a part of the show. And good luck with what you do the rest of the way.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you.
Man, that was a great segment.